Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Really appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, and in the context of kind of well-being and motherhood and family life?
Yeah, absolutely. So, firstly, thank you for inviting me here. I really loved our chat when we spoke last week, and it's lovely to be able to, talk to the people that you look after. So my name's Saleema Davies. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm the founder of a company called Papillona. And what we do is we create audio recordings to support young people's mental health and their parents and their grandparents and so on. But we focus on young people. And we do this in quite a unique way. So you stream our recordings, a bit like Netflix, but for mental health. You pop them on in the background. And the listener hears, just gentle nature sounds. But underneath, at the level that the subconscious mind absorbs, because that's what I'm all about, are special, perfectly crafted affirmations. And we're working with the listener's natural brainwave cycles to access the subconscious mind and to start to lay and change the foundations that are there in terms of the beliefs that people hold about themselves, that these young people are learning all the time about themselves, to ones that really support good mental health. Because actually our happiness, our confidence, and our success in the world is very much dictated to not by what happens to us, but what we feel about that and what we believe about that and about ourselves and the world around us. And because we're all busy parents, and we really don't have much time, and because our teenagers don't want to do anything and get engaged, or they don't want to talk about things, or because our 3-year-old can't articulate why they're scared or something along those lines, we've designed these recordings to be really simple and effective. So you don't have to sit down and engage. You don't have to tell your teen that you've put them on. You just pop them on in the background and you leave them to do their work. And it sounds like magic, but it's not. It's scientifically backed. And our purpose is to make life easier and simpler for parents and for their children, and to really help people really get on and be empowered and get on and be the best that they can be, without all those nagging issues that we're always carrying all over the place.
I love that. I'm just so fascinated by this whole concept. And I know we had a little chat last week, didn't you? And you kind of explained it to me. I've thought about it a lot since. And I just think it's so fascinating. So thanks for that little explanation. What are the kind of affirmations that you've got in that kind of subconscious layer? Can you give us an example of
Yeah, absolutely. So we divide our tracks into different issues, really, that we're addressing. So either we might be addressing anxiety, we might be helping people just generally be more calm and relaxed in the way that they are, even if they're not struggling with that. We might be looking at anger issues. We might be looking at things like resilience that we want to promote rather than dealing with a particular issue. And so all the affirmations are crafted according to whatever the track is that's being played. They're very simple. They're very carefully crafted because the subconscious mind only responds to certain things, and also because we want to make sure that even the youngest children who are just getting language can benefit. But they will be things like, I am safe, I am loved, it's safe for me to ask for help, I make friends easily, it's good for me to be me. I am different to other people, and that's great. Encouraging those sorts of things that we want for our children. So you'll never hear something like, or rather you don't hear them anyway, but we'll never put in something like, I'm good at maths, because that's not what it's about. The child might not be good at maths, and giving them the suggestion that they are is not going to help them, might cause an awful lot of problems. But what we're doing is underpinning values that we want for our children. So we do want them to be curious about the world around them. We do want to promote a love of learning. So there will be, it's fun to learn. It's interesting to learn. It's interesting to find out about the world around me, so that the bits that they are good at and they do gravitate towards, they'll pursue, and they'll pursue with gusto, because, you know, learning is about that, really, isn't it? It's not about necessarily being good by rote. So we're looking at the sort of values that parents in general tend to want to promote. So optimism, resilience, the ability to make friends, the ability to learn, or the desire to learn, the desire to build their body so that it's healthy. You know, there's a lot about body confidence, there's a lot about being strong in our bodies, about healthy eating, those sorts of things that are, that we want for ourselves as well as our children, basically.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, I love that they're applicable to everyone, aren't they? And I know that you're focusing on children, and you can definitely speak to that in a second, but I love the idea that you can have it on in the house and it will be absolutely benefiting everyone, you know, from toddler to granny, which is so cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we all need the help, quite frankly. And you know, and I include myself very much in the, you know, the Papillona came about because of my own failings that I was aware of as a mother, and I know that we can all do with help, and we've seen great results with, you know, children that are still in their cots, and, you know, the oldest person that I know that's using it is 90. So you know, there's a whole spectrum. And yeah,
that's so amazing. Can you explain briefly, if you may, because I know it's a whole enormous subject, but a little bit about how that subconscious mind works? And it's something that I've kind of only become particularly interested in or aware of kind of in the last few years, and it's just so powerful, isn't it? And I guess you can take these broad concepts and then it is applicable to all sorts of stuff, whether that's education, money, finance, relationships, body image. Like you said, self-worth is like, oh my goodness, isn't that just like underpinning everything? And it's such an incredible subject, and I think when you become aware of it, it's like whew, this whole concept opens up to you. And I know I've delved into that kind of on a personal level, to do with kind of relationships and self-worth, and now kind of career and finance. So how does it work? How does that kind of subconscious programming work? Because it starts from like day dot, doesn't it, when we're born, all this kind of.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's anecdotal evidence that it starts before, that it starts in the womb. But you know, scientifically, we know, and we can show that it starts from day dot, you know, from the point of birth. And I think if I just take a step back, I think it's really helpful to understand why beliefs are so important before we get onto the subconscious mind, if that's all right. Because people often think that they are happy or sad, or, you know, because of what happens to them. But we all know of, even if we don't know them personally, millionaires who worry about money, or people who have been through enormous hardships who are nonetheless upbeat and out and helping people, and, you know, generous in spirit. And it's very much about how we view what happens to us rather than those events themselves. And I think one of the simplest examples that I like to give is, we've all had that experience of sending a text message or an email to a friend or a client or someone, and we don't hear back, right? And if our beliefs about ourselves are, you know, I'm a nice person, I'm good at my job, I make friends easily, whatever, then the fact that that person hasn't responded may result in us going, they're being a bit ditzy again, or maybe they're busy, or maybe I'll check in, see that they're okay. Whereas for those people, like many of us, who carry this whole thing about I'm not good enough, or I'm always saying the wrong thing, or people don't tend to like me, I'm awkward, the fact that our friend doesn't respond sends us into a blind tears, you know, what have I done? What have I said? We scroll back through emails and phone, text to see, and we might be up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, oh, I know I've offended them. How am I going to sort this out?
Mm.
It's the same situation.
Yeah.
There's a message that hasn't had the response, but our whole experience and our happiness is dictated by how we view that, right? So that's the sort of context of understanding here why it's so important, right? In terms of the subconscious mind, I think it's really simplest to think of the mind as an iceberg, and that top 5 to 10% above the waterline is the conscious mind. So that's the place that we're aware of our thinking. It's the place where we kind of make the decisions that we're going to eat healthily or go for a run or what we're going to do, or when we're having that, the voice in our head, blah, 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 blah. That's a bit that we're very much aware of. There's a place of our willpower and our intention. But underneath that waterline, that remaining 95% is the subconscious. And that's the bit that's really important and that's really running the show. And the subconscious mind is absolutely amazing, right? Its primary function is to keep us alive. So it's the bit that makes sure that our body's functioning properly. We don't have to remind ourselves to breathe and, or to pump blood. And it's the bit that remembers all the automatic parts of life. So, when we first learn to tie a bow tie or to drive a car, it's really, thoughtful. I do it like this, or is it this bit over or that bit, or it's mirror, brake, remove, movement. But after a while, it becomes natural. We don't have to think about it anymore because it's absorbed in our subconscious. So the subconscious learns and it takes things on board and it holds it there. Now, the subconscious is bombarded by information all the time, particularly as we're growing up. And it doesn't have time to reprocess all the information over and over again. So once it's learned something, it holds on to it. And that's really helpful, right? So the subconscious is wired to keep us alive. That's its primary function. So it's right that if I put my hand into fire, that I know that it burns and I remember that, right? I don't want to have to keep learning it over and over again. So, fire, hot, I'll stay away. Subconscious knows that. But why this then becomes important is because it will have that same response when we are emotionally charged. So if I'm in school and I put up my hand to answer, the French teacher, right, and I make an effort to speak French and it goes badly wrong and everybody laughs at me and that hurts, my subconscious goes, not doing that again.
That's like emotionally putting your hand into the fire, into the French fire. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it says, right, we won't do that. And so we might be absorbing a belief at that time that's we're not really aware of. We just know it hurts. Maybe we think it's not safe to speak up, or I'm no good at languages, or I always say the wrong thing. Our subconscious will interpret it in one particular way and then bang, it's locked in there. And what I noticed as a hypnotherapist, when I first started in practice and before Papillona came to life, was that the majority of the people that were coming for treatment in their 30s and 40s and beyond, 90% of their issues started in childhood. And most of them weren't massive. So yes, we dealt with trauma. Yes, we dealt with abuse. Yes, we dealt with very serious situations. But for the majority of people, what we were diving in to find out the core, where that core belief came from, and then reprogramming it, if you like, they were small things that had happened to them in childhood that as a parent, you're just not even aware of. But to a child's mind and a child's world, it's massive. Yeah. And so, when we look back on our lives and we go, yeah, that was, I remember that I had that experience in the classroom, but that's life. We don't see its impact, and we have no idea that we've been carrying this belief with us for the last 30, 40 years. And it's meant that we haven't been able to speak up when we've needed to, whether it's, in a job where we have to say, this isn't working, I need to do this way, or whether we're going into the playground or into the school to stand up for our kid who's being bullied, or, whatever it happens to be, because our subconscious goes, it's not safe. And between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is a barrier. It's called the reticular activating system, or RAS. And that stays in place during our normal waking state, because we don't have the opportunity, we don't have the time, subconscious mind doesn't have the time to keep reprogramming, right? And so once something's locked in, we can't get to it just by talking about it. But when the filter is suspended, which it is when we're in certain brainwave patterns, basically the alpha, theta and delta states, that's relaxed, and we can go in and we can change what's already there.
And just bringing the defenses down a little bit so you can access that.
Exactly. So these are just stages of relaxation. Okay, so sort of gentle relaxation to sort of deep state that we go into when we're falling into sleep, and we go in and out of it all day, every day, but particularly kids. So we all fall into it at least twice a day, when we're falling to sleep and when we're waking up, right? But we all go in and out throughout the time. Those moments where you're staring out the window and you don't realize that time's passing, or highway hypnosis, where you get home and you can't quite remember how you got there, and you hope you didn't jump a red light. To
the kind of flow state when you're so kind of focused on something, and you're kind of in that kind of automatic.
Exactly. So you become mesmerized by something. But of course kids are in and out of that all the time, and that's why we say that kids are sponges, because when they're in those states, they're just absorbing stuff all the time. But the good news is that because we're going in and out of it, we can access that and change that programming that's already in there, and make sure that the programming that our kids are getting is ones that support good mental health. And I hate the word programming because it makes it sound, like some kind of computer program. But if you think about it, when we learn that it's not safe to speak up, it's a bit like a computer program that starts running, and Microsoft 2000 was brilliant in 2000, right? It was the thing to have on your machine, and it made everything work really well. But in 2021, it slows your machine down, and it leads to the circle of doom, right?
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Exactly. So we need to clear it off and upgrade our beliefs. And what we're doing with our children is we're making sure that those beliefs are the right ones. And then if you think about it in terms of the iceberg analogy, we've all had those situations where we think, right, I'm going to do X, I'm going to eat really healthily, and we really mean it, and we stock up the fridge with some nice stuff, and we think about all our meal plans and whatever, and then we get to the end of the day, and before we know it, we've got a glass of something cold in our hand, we're munching away on crisps without even thinking about it, right? And then we go, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And we beat ourselves up, and we say that we're lazy or we're weak-willed and everything, and it's not. It's because that it's only that 5 or 10% that's made that decision. But the subconscious might be running completely different. So lots of us grow up in families, and I'm guilty of this with my own children, of using food to make things better. It's been hard, well, let's have a little treat, that sort of thing. So we've had a hard day, and we're nurturing ourselves because that's what we've learned. And when you've got 90% pulling away from 10%, you know which one's going to win. But when they're both aligned, you can start to move forward in a really healthy way in the direction that you want to go. And so, that's a kind of massive splurge in a small nutshell about how it actually works and what we're trying to do.
That's amazing. Thank you for that explanation. It makes so much sense, doesn't it, when you hear that and you go, oh, of course it works like that. It makes so much sense, but it takes a certain amount of awareness in the first place to acknowledge that, doesn't it? Because I heard this kind of phrase that's thinking, doing, being.
Mhm.
You're going to think about something and then you do something and then it becomes so ingrained that just is you. So I suppose it takes a certain amount of awareness, doesn't it, to go, well, I'm not intrinsically this thing, it's just X amount of years of habit and story. Just thinking then about this cycle with parenting, with being mothers and taking care of ourselves, plus being mothers and taking care of our children, because I sometimes feel pressured or a little bit intimidated at this idea that there's so much going into them that is subconscious, and everything you say they're going to be picking up on. Have you got any kind of ideas or tips to, one, kind of ease that load on ourselves, like taking that pressure off, because it is scary, isn't it? You hear these,
Terrifying.
everything, their whole life is going to be laid out by the time they're 7 or whatever it is, and you think, oh my god, right, I've got to get everything absolutely right before that point, because then it's cut off, which I'm sure isn't the case. But how do we use that pressure on ourselves? And then also, how do we maybe look at some of those programming things that we've had ourselves and that we're then probably taking into adulthood, and that we then probably are subconsciously passing on to the next round as well?
Yeah, I look, it's a minefield. Right?
Yeah, sorry,
It's
big
an
question.
absolute no. Well, that's a whole it's a whole discussion. Let's see where it goes. But it is a minefield.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that Papillona came to life was because, like I said, I realized that I wasn't doing very well as a mother. So I knew as a hypnotherapist that I wanted my children to know that they were loved amongst above anything else, and they were the most important people in my life and all of that kind of stuff, and I wanted them to feel strong and confident and everything. I knew how important the beliefs were, but I also knew that I wasn't giving them those messages in real life, because yes darling, I absolutely love you, I think you're most amazing, but mama needs to take this call right now, you know or yes, you're amazing, but will you just put your shoes on and get. And it's just, I knew that it was a mess, and I thought, well, I can't sort this out. And this is where Papillona comes in, and we can't necessarily sort it out for ourselves because we've got our own programs running, because life is really difficult, because there are points at which we have to take phone calls and things like that, and they can't be the center of attention all the time, and it's not healthy for them to be. And also because we simply don't know what they are absorbing. We don't know what they're absorbing in the school playground, at school, in nursery and whatever, from social media. And we know actually that a lot of that's very unhealthy, but we also don't know what they're absorbing from us. And one of the stories that, I'm not sure I mentioned it to you when we were chatting before, but really struck home for me was, so my background, as well as a hypnotherapist, I'm a lawyer, and I used to travel quite a bit for business. And I did it less when the children were along and so on and so forth. And I had something only a few years ago where I had to go to France overnight. And I was explaining to my youngest daughter that, yes, I was going away, and I'd be away for just one night. And yes, there was a swimming pool there, but I wouldn't be using it and everything like that. And she's like, oh, it's all right, Mama. I know. It's like when Kaya, that's her older sister, and I were arguing all the time, and you went to Spain. I'm like, what?
That
I
was her
felt like,
association with it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and the thing is I had gone to Spain on another business trip, and I would have explained it in exactly the same way. But she associated it with her arguing with her sister, and therefore, when Mum's had enough, Mum leaves.
Yeah.
I was absolutely horrified. There was nothing in my behaviour that would have given her that impression, but that was the program that she absorbed. So, however much I was walking on eggshells and everything, I couldn't get it right. and that is the nature of the world that we are living in, and that's the nature of life. So I think we need to take a lot of the pressure off us, understand that we are doing the best that we can as parents with the upbringing that we have, with the knowledge that we have, and that we have to allow for life, right? And that's very much where Papillona came in, because it was just an awareness that I couldn't control this. This was out of my control. But what I could do was create these recordings that I could play to them, that would then reinforce the sort of messages, the sort of beliefs that I wanted for them. And that's exactly where it came from. But we can't wrap our kids in cotton wool, and we can't create this ideal Truman Show life for them. And we all have our own baggage that we're carrying.
And that's the key, isn't it? The control word. We can't control it. We can't control what's going in through those filters. And I love that these recordings are, to my mind, just like a really good foundation, aren't they? They're just like, yes, there's going to be all this other stuff that we can do and we can think about, but here's just a solid foundation that kind of underpins it. And I think that's really good. Would you advise then, going back to what you're saying about kind of sleep cycles and stuff, would you advise that you just put them on at a certain time of the day? Would you put them on at bedtime when you're going to bed? Does that vary between children and adults, or is it just whenever?
It's what suits you as a parent, right? So I have clients who put them on all the time, right? There's one lady I know, and she doesn't have children, she just uses them herself, and she has them playing in the background all the time. I think that's probably overkill, but she finds the noises relaxing, she finds them, they boost her, she lives on her own, and it's a tool that works for her. We have some children who it's part of the bedtime routine. So when you start brushing the teeth and things like that, it goes on then. Some people will play it overnight. I know people who play it at the dinner table without any of their family realizing, because it's just so unobtrusive. So they don't have to talk about it at all. And the other thing is it's not a continual, it can be used as a continual tool, but we see results really quickly. So we have children, for example, who, one that springs to mind was, run up to Halloween, watches The Witches, which is quite frankly a scary film. Yeah.
And I recently watched the new version as well, and I was like, this can't be for kids. It's really terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly, but it's Roald Dahl. We all think it's. I mean, there's a whole conversation about how grim these things actually are. And then couldn't go to sleep. So his parents started using. There's a playlist, so we put some of them together so you can stream them for particular issues. There's a playlist called "I'm Not Scared of the Dark." So they started putting it on in the day for him, just in the background, without talking about it. And by that night, he was happy to go to bed. And so, yeah, and he doesn't need it all the time. And so they'll go in and they'll do a boost when it's needed. But it's not, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It's lovely if it's part of the routine. It helps if it's part of the routine, but it's also issues based. So, people can just turn to it as they need it. And what we've designed, because I really believe that there are things that we can do for mental health that don't have to be. Mental health support should not always be difficult, time consuming, or expensive, right? So we've tried to make this as affordable as possible for families and to serve as much of the family as possible. So with our premium membership, which is like $13.99 a month, which gives you access to everything, you can access, I think it's 5 or 7 different logins. So you can have, one child listening to the I'm Not Afraid of the Dark. You've got another child in another room playing the Body Confidence. And then you've got the parents using the Calm and Relax to get to sleep. And that's, you know, and so everybody gets what they need when they need it. And it's very much, you know, use it often, but use it in a way that works for you, because it's about making life easier.
That makes so much sense. I'm glad you mentioned that it's not, everything doesn't have to be a super effort, and that's part of what I'm trying to get across with kind of the self-care stuff as well, is just making it daily, easy, little thing here, little thing there, and kind of, you know, building up that picture. That's really encouraging. And also, when you were talking about, you know, just dipping into it as and when you need, I've noticed I go through very sporadic periods of feeling a little bit anxious and pent up about certain things, about kind of women's safety and bringing up a girl and stuff like that. So that's the perfect example of, oh, I'm just feeling a bit like, oh, about that at the moment. Let me just dip into that and pop that on for a couple of days. And I love that. It's just another thing, isn't it, to have in your toolbox, to have in your well-being toolbox.
Exactly. And because we're so busy, and because we're all time poor, I wanted something that doesn't take any effort. You know, so people will say, you know, is it like Headspace? Is it something like that? And, you know, there's a place for all of these things, you know, meditation and counseling, and all of these things have enormous value. But I wanted something that you can put on and forget about, and you don't have to get someone to sit down and concentrate, you know, because we just don't have time, or, you know, our kids may not have the willingness, our partners may not have the willingness, you know, but we can help anyway. I just think there is so much of a load on people, particularly parents, particularly mothers, nowadays, that it's overwhelming and it's too much. And we need to simplify things, and we need to make things as simple and as easy as possible. And that's our mentality.
Amen to that. Absolutely love that. So listen, I'm going to try some of these out, right, because I'll do a little task or a little try something out at the end of each of these chats. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be doing this. I'm so excited. So any tips or advice or kind of last words for me going into that, or should I just have a little nosy round and try?
Just try. So we offer a 7-day free trial for anybody on our core membership anyway, because why not? And people should see results within those 7 days. But no, I mean, there's a little video about how to use them, but basically we have individual audios and we have playlists. Pick a playlist. If you don't know which one to pick any of them, because they all have affirmations that will help everybody. None of them will hurt anyone. There's a core one which has the 4 sort of foundational principles, if you like, that I think are fundamental to happiness and well-being. So there's a optimism, resilience, confidence, and one called calm and relax, which is great for insomnia as well.
Excellent.
Stick them on in the background. Find a time to stick them on, like, regularly, and then just notice how you feel. Don't use them in the bath. Don't use them in the car. They're really relaxing. I don't want any accidents. But other than that, you know, while you're working, whilst your kid's colouring in, you know, all of those kinds of things, whilst there's homework going on, at night, you know, you can use them while they're asleep. Just stick a playlist on and let them do their work, and then let me know.
Perfect. I will do. I'm so excited to try them. We always have something on in this house. It's just me when I'm here in the day, and then it's just me and my daughter. So we often have noise on, whether that's like the Frozen soundtrack or whether it's like the bit of jazz or the radio. I often, if I'm sleeping, will pop Radio 4 on just to have like people talking. Which is nice. So this is going to fit in so well into our house, just having like a different noise on in the background. I'm really excited. Where can people find you and a little bit more information, or where to go and sign up to these audios?
Yeah, sure. So it's papillona.com, Papalona. And you'll find information there about how to sign up for the free trial. We're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram as well. So it's Papillona Limited, I think, on Facebook, but you'll find us if you search for us. Or it'll just go to the website, and there's all the stuff you can put it, and we can put it all on this. But yeah, I'd say you know, we've got a Facebook page and we've got a Facebook group, and sign up for our emails. So one of the things that we're really big about is making sure that we also provide bite-sized information to help parents support their kids' mental health. So nothing that we offer will take more than 10 minutes to do with someone. It's all very simple, it all makes sense, but it all works. And so yeah, there's loads of information on Facebook and on the email and everything about how to cope with bullying or promote resilience or whatever. So yeah, just come and join us and be part of the community and give it a try. And all feedback, as far as I'm concerned, is good feedback. So we want to hear from everybody. And I'm particularly interested if there are issues that people are coming up with and that they want support with, we'll go away and create a track.
Amazing. I just think it's so brilliant. Thanks so much for taking the time. It's simple, it's clearly very effective, and it's really important work. So yeah, absolutely happy to connect and to spread the word. I think it's brilliant.
No, well, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. And I love what you're doing and putting together, and goodness knows, you know, we all need that help, and we need to be able to simplify and all of these things. So you know, delighted to be able to team up with you in that way.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, Saleema. And I will go and record a little bit of how my experience is over the next few days trying these audios, and I'll let you know how we get on.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Speak to you soon then. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
So here you can see the example of the Papillona website and how that looks, and how all the different playlists and audios are on there. I chose a confidence one, and I just put it on while I was doing a bit of movement and my daughter was playing with her sticker book. And I've put the audio over the top so you can see a little example. And I often have kind of nature sounds and jungle sounds anyway, and it was really reminded me of that. Really gentle to have on in the background.